Welcome to a new daily top Askreddit video. Today's topic.
If there were no term limits for the United States presidency, who do you think would have had the longest run as president? Modern era, Bill Clinton. He had a 65% approval rating at the end of his second term and could have been easily re-elected in 2000. This is definitely the answer. Would have beat GW by a landslide, gotten re-elected due to being a wartime president after 9/11, and I just don't see him losing to any of the guys that lost to Obama either. Plus he was still relatively young, especially by today's standards. He was 54 at the end of his second term. Even if he had had 4 full terms, he would have been 62 by then. One of Gore's biggest campaign blunders was trying to distance himself from Clinton during the election. A fun, what if, to wonder about is how different things could be if Gore won. Bush would have been done, and I don't see him running again in 2004, so let's say Gore wins a second term. After 16 years of a Dem president, I could see a Rep., likely McCain, run and win in 2008. Obama likely stays in the Senate for a while, McCain wins re-election in 2012. Trump likely never runs in 2016, Obama runs and wins in 2016 and likely wins again in 2020. Based on who the opposing candidate would be, I think Eisenhower could have won a third term, Clinton probably, and Obama definitely. Boy, I'd have loved to see Obama run against Trump. Obama would have won hands down against Trump in 2016. Would have been interesting to then see what would have happened in 2020. There's a concerning number of people in the thread unaware that FDR died in office. Me going through the comments and upvoting every time someone points this out, lol. FDR holds the record and is probably the correct choice. The only other person I could think of is Reagan, just given how dominant his 2 wins were and how HW winning in '88 was essentially a vote for him. He did of course have dementia in his later years as president. But the past 2 elections have shown people don't really care about cognitive decline. Reagan certainly wins re-election in '88 but may not have survived the end of the Cold War and the recession in '91. He was also quite old at that point, and may have very well had a Biden moment in a debate. He came close against Mondale a few times. People forget that mythology around Reagan didn't really manifest itself until the mid-90s. In the late '80s, early '90s, even some Republicans like Mitt Romney were openly repudiating him. Reagan was already having Biden moments as president. He was also a bit of an idiot. They wouldn't let him answer questions unless they knew the questions beforehand so he could prepare. The press knew it and tried to ambush him on the way to the Air Force One helicopter. They ran the engines to drown out the questions after the first time. Reagan got a huge hall pass for getting shot. The press treated him with kid gloves after that. If he didn't get shot, the whole Iran-Contra scandal might have gone down differently. Republicans don't care about Republicans having cognitive decline. Look, I voted for him, but Biden clearly wasn't all there and his age should have been a bigger concern. I'm happy he bowed out in 24, but he shouldn't have ran in 20 either, and too many Dems swept it under the rug. Reagan would have had a decent shot at a third term at the very least. Obama and Clinton too. But I doubt anyone would unseat FDR. I mean, he was in a wheelchair by the end you can't unseat him, that's rude. I don't think Reagan would have been elected for a third term. He was well into Alzheimer's by the end of his second term, and I don't think he could have hidden that in debates. It wasn't until recently that Republicans loved the idea of a mentally deranged president who regularly shits himself. If Theodore Roosevelt decided to run in 1908, he probably could have won both '08 and '12. Given the political climate of the US at the time and his party's success in elections, I think a non-assassinated Lincoln could have won the 2 elections Grant won. I mean, for the sake of us history, I would have just taken Lincoln getting to complete his second term so that Reconstruction didn't get neutered by his Confederate sympathizing vice president. Who do I think? FDR. Who would I have wanted in modern times? Obama. It's funny how much Obama's approval rating went up near the end of his term when people actually realized what kind of leader they were about to lose. Well, yeah, he looks amazing compared to the absolute douchebaggery that is Donald Trump and the charisma vacuum that is Hillary Clinton. I think it's not unlikely that Michelle tells him no if Obama wanted to run for a third term. Oh yeah, definitely. Michelle was a wonderful first lady and I would vote for her in a heartbeat if she ran. But she genuinely hates politics and was so relieved to get out of there. I don't think any president since FDR has been popular enough to succeed in running for a third term against a competent opponent. Obama might have been able to pull off a win against Trump in 2016, considering Hillary's performance, but I also don't think Trump would have won the Republican primary if Obama was the Democratic nominee. Clinton was also incredibly popular at the end of his second term. Gore almost won. Clinton would have had 2,000 in a walk. Gore should have won. I always felt that if we were an alternate universe, that was the point we diverted. Reagan was popular enough but old, though he was younger when he left office than Biden was at the start of his presidency, and Trump was at the start of his second term. George Washington would have been in office until he died. Tons of people and politicians wanted him to run for a third term, which he almost certainly would have won, but he didn't want to for various reasons, both personal and political. Granted, he died just a couple years later, but health notwithstanding, Washington could have served 4 or 5 terms if he had wanted. He explicitly didn't want to because that would be way too much like a king. And he wanted to sit under his own vine and fig tree. You know, a moment alone in the shade. Washington had to be begged to accept the position since he was the only person with near unanimous adoration in the country. Hell, he had to be begged to attend the Constitutional Convention in the first place because of such status, and later had to be persuaded to stick around for a second term. There were no term limits when he was president. He stepped down to set the term limit precedent. He led by example. As such, no. Definitely not GW. Edit, shouldn't have used the word precedent since it is often used in a legal context, and as I stated, there was no actual term limit. I was using the word precedent culturally. He did it as a signal that presidents would not be in office forever. It did not create any kind of rule. That's why I said he led by example. I want to say Washington against his will. Like, he didn't want to die in office, but I can almost imagine a world where the rest of the founders conspire to force him to stay, and then eventually weekend at Bernie's him to 8 terms. But there wasn't a term limit when he was president. Term limits started after FDR's 4th term, and I can't really see anyone breaking that record, so I'll still go with FDR at 4. Washington basically could have been King of America if he'd wanted to. Luckily he very specifically did not want that. Obama absolutely would have beaten the pants off Trump to win a 3rd term. He might still be president today. Obama left with a 58% approval rating, so likely true, coming from a Republican. The Democrats have only themselves to blame for pushing Hillary and then later Kamala. Bernie may have beaten Trump. I personally blame a lot more people than just Democrats. FDR would have probably stayed until he physically couldn't. Dude had the whole country running on New Deal fumes and sheer willpower. He did do this. FDR died in office. In his 4th term. They amended the Constitution with the term limit due to FDR, who died in office. He did. He died in office. This is in fact history and why the presidents have a 2-term limit. There was no term limit before this, it is just that most presidents followed GW's example or failed to get re-elected to a 3rd term. Now if he lived, he'd more than likely hold his title of longest-serving president. For now he is the only one to have served 3 full terms, and IIRC he was voted in for a 4th. He literally died in office. Obama would still be president. He would be completely useless because he's always staving off a civil war from racist maniacs, but Dems would still vote for him every 4 years. You're suggesting he'd currently be on his 5th term right now. I don't think he makes it past 3. Though I definitely think he wins the 3rd term. Yeah, he would have won the 3rd term for certain. I think COVID would have sunk his chances at a 4th though. If he hadn't been murdered, I'd say Kennedy. I'd say no, because of Vietnam, he likely would have had a similar policy to LBJ and that sunk him in /68. The number of people here who think FDR probably could have stayed in office until he died doesn't speak well of the US educational system. William Henry Harrison. The bravest answer of this thread. I died in 30 days. Clinton would still be around. People love to shit on him for his extramarital affairs, but he was the best president we have had in decades. He was smart, articulate, and his policies had America headed in a great direction. The Republicans, per the usual rhetoric, tried to paint him as anything other than he was. They got Bush elected, and he promptly entered us into a faux war, committed untold numbers of atrocities, brought back torture, and ruined the economy as fast as he could. We got Obama, he centered the world, withdrew us from as many wars, conflicts as was safe to do, and had created jobs, strengthened our economy, and fixed the terrible deals that Bush was responsible for starting. Then we got Trump, and he shit the bed so bad, he set America back 30 years. We get Biden for 4 years, and America is on the right path, best economy America has had in 50 years, and then we get Trump back in office and everything is falling apart. Clinton would still be in office, we would have more peace than wars, a very strong economy, great jobs, infrastructure, and socialized healthcare. Student loans would be forgiven at 10 years, and not a hedge fund for people to invest into so college students stay so poor they cannot afford anything. Trump 2.0 is currently trying, and so far succeeding, in setting you back to the 1920s. A foreign policy of isolationism, mercantilism as the ruling trade policy, and it wouldn't be surprising if he ushered in another Great Depression economically. Personally, I'd rate Obama over Clinton due to difficulty. Clinton came into office right after the end of the Cold War and only really had the recession of the early 90s to deal with, which was a blip on the radar compared to the 2008 recession that Obama inherited on top of two unpopular forever wars. Not saying that Clinton wasn't a bad president, he's number 2 in my lifetime, possibly number 3 depending on how much you weigh foreign affairs, but I think he had an easier starting position than Obama did. Clinton signed the bills that led to the Depression in 2008. Clinton benefited from the internet. He was nothing more than a great smile. Best economy America has had in 50 years, this is the problem right fucking here. Trump is doing his best to destroy the country, but normal people on the ground were not benefiting from that best economy shit the Dems viciously jerked themselves over. That single piece of messaging is probably what doomed us to 4 more years of Cheeto Benito. Our economy is so great, we fixed everything. My brother in Christ, sandwich meat is still twice as expensive as in 2019 and wages still haven't gone up. Owning a home is basically a pipe dream, and going to college or getting sick might as well be signing your financial death warrant. Normal people are far worse off than before COVID, but who cares? We fixed the economy. At least investors are making bank, right? Middle and working class people can see right through that. Why would we care if the economy is doing good if we can't afford to live? It's a slap in the face. You can pretend Democrat presidents would have saved everyone and made us a utopia, but the wealth gap widened under every single one that you listed. Democrats can pat themselves on the back until their hands fall off, but that's not going to make people show up to vote. I would have thought fucking Donald Trump winning again would have been enough to bitch slap reality into Democrats, but who did they blame? Misogynistic Latinos. Fuck that out of touch bullshit. It got us where we are. Allow me to reiterate, Trump won again and Democrats failed to effectively show any amount of self-awareness or even general awareness of how people felt watching 8 Democrats join Republicans in blocking $15 minimum wage while they fix the economy. That party is fucking useless. We need one to represent people and not just the interests of corporate ghouls. Edit, keep the downvotes coming. If you keep punishing dissenters and failing to realize your faults, you'll remain out of touch and keep losing voters. When I point out that the ACA continues to line the pockets of healthcare executives while the rest of us pay skyrocketing costs, I too get downvoted. The wealth gap increased under Democrats. It increased exponentially under the Biden administration, for fuck's sake. They're not on our side. There's notable exceptions, but most of them are bought and paid for.